Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we take a look at a different crime or justice milestone that happened this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is January 12th. On this day in 1998, a routine traffic stop in Lawrence County, Georgia, turned into a tragic incident that cost Deputy Kyle Dinkheller his life. This horrific crime, caught on dash cam footage, shocked the nation and has since become a cornerstone in law enforcement training. Today, we'll explore what happened on that fateful day and the legacy of this case. Let's get started. Before we get into the events of that tragic January afternoon, I want to talk about Kyle Dinkheller, the man behind the badge. Born on June 18, 1975 in San Diego, California, Kyle was someone who genuinely cared about his community. He joined the Lawrence County Sheriff's Office when he was just 20 years old, ready to make a difference. His colleagues described him as calm, compassionate, and hardworking, someone who handled every situation with care and professionalism. At just 22, Kyle was a husband and a father to a young daughter with a second child on the way. He had an amazing, bright, fulfilling future ahead of him, but his life was tragically cut short. On January 12, 1998, Deputy Dinkheller was on patrol near Dudley, Georgia, when he noticed a pickup truck speeding. That pickup truck was going nearly 100 miles per hour. Like any officer, he did his job, pulling the vehicle over on a quiet stretch of Whipple Crossing Road. What started as a routine traffic stop quickly spiraled into a nightmare. The driver, Andrew Brannon, stepped out of his truck almost immediately. Brannon, a 49-year-old Vietnam veteran, began acting erratically, yelling, quote, "Shoot me," end quote, and then performing what could only be described as a bizarre dance in the middle of the road. Deputy Dinkheller remained professional and calm, repeatedly instructing Brannon to stay in his vehicle. But Brannon's behavior grew more aggressive. He retrieved a semi-automatic M1 carbine rifle from his truck, and the situation escalated into every police officer's worst nightmare. The dashcam recorded Deputy Dinkheller pleading for Brannon to drop the weapon, but instead, Brannon opened fire. A gunfight ensued, with Deputy Dinkheller attempting to return fire. Despite Kyle's attempts to defend himself, he was struck multiple times, including fatal wounds to his chest and his head. Brannon fled the scene, leaving Kyle fatally wounded. What followed was a massive manhunt to bring Brannon to justice. As it turns out, he had escaped into rural Lawrence County. But early the next morning, he was found hiding under a camouflage tarp near his home. Officers were able to arrest him without further incident. During his arrest, Brannon reportedly said, quote, "They can hang me," end quote, showing absolutely no remorse. Evidence against him was overwhelming. Ballistics, the dash cam footage, and his own admissions left absolutely no doubt about his guilt. But Andrew Brannon didn't start out as a cop killer. He was a decorated Vietnam veteran who served his country with bravery, but returned with the scars of war. Like many of his fellow veterans, he suffered from undiagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder. However, unlike many of his fellow veterans, even those who suffered from PTSD as well, he chose violence. In January 2000, Andrew Brannon went on trial for the murder of Deputy Dinkheller. The prosecution relied heavily on that dash cam footage, which showed Brannon's aggression and the prolonged attack. It was clear evidence that left no doubt about what had actually happened that day. But while Brannon's defense team wasn't arguing that he didn't shoot Deputy Dinkheller, they did argue that his PTSD played a significant role in his actions, and they presented evidence of his military service and the struggles that he had faced afterwards. Now, this did, of course, add context to what happened on that horrible day, but it didn't end up being considered to be a mitigating factor in the crime. The jury ultimately convicted Brannon of murder, and he was sentenced to death. In his ruling, the judge said, quote, "This was a cold-blooded killing of a law enforcement officer who was doing his duty to protect the public." End quote. Over the next 15 years, Brannon's defense team filed numerous appeals arguing that his mental health should have been given more weight during sentencing. But courts consistently upheld his conviction and his sentence. On January 13th, 2015, 17 years and 1 day after Deputy Dinkheller's murder, Andrew Brannon was executed by lethal injection at the Georgia Diagnostic and Classification Prison in Jackson, Georgia. Before his execution, he expressed remorse, saying, quote, "I extend my condolences to the Dinkheller family, especially Kyle's parents, his wife, and his 2 children." End quote. His execution marked the end of a long legal battle, but provided a little solace to those who had lost Kyle Dinkheller. The loss of Deputy Dinkheller not only profoundly impacted his family, his colleagues, and those who knew him, but the law enforcement community as a whole. His death became a powerful teaching tool for police training nationwide. The dash cam footage, difficult as it is to watch, is used in academies to teach officers about situational awareness, de-escalation, and the risks that they face even on what should be just a normal traffic stop. Lawrence County Sheriff Bill Harrell has spoken about Kyle's lasting legacy, saying, quote, "Kyle's legacy lives on through the officers who learn from his story. His sacrifice has saved countless lives by teaching others how to better protect themselves and their communities." End quote. Deputy Kyle Dinkheller's murder on January 12, 1998 was a senseless act of violence that took away a promising young life. But his legacy lives on, ensuring that his fellow officers are better prepared to handle the challenges of their jobs. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found today's episode meaningful, please subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to join me tomorrow as we explore another significant moment in true crime history. Stay safe and be sure to take care of yourself and those around you. Day by Day True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!